Welcome to this edition of CBN News Weekend. I'm Charlene Aaron. The U.S. military has opened all combat jobs to women, dismissing requests by the Marine Corps to exclude women from certain frontline combat jobs.
There will be no exceptions. This means that as long as they qualify and meet the standards, women will now be able to contribute to our mission in ways they could not before. And even more importantly, our military will be better able to harness the skills and perspectives that talented women have to offer.
The change means women will now be allowed to serve in the military's most grueling and difficult jobs, including special operations forces such as the Army Delta units and Navy SEALs. The change in policy has started a national dialogue about selective service and the draft, the family unit and traditional values, qualifications, and the role of feminism in our society. To discuss these things, we gathered some of our own reporters and producers. Take a look. Caitlin Burke and Rebecca Kemp join us here in Virginia Beach, and Abigail Robertson and Amber Strong join us from our Washington, D.C. bureau. Now, this could be a change for women regarding selective service, something that men have to sign up for when they turn 18 in case there is a draft. Does equal rights mean equal responsibilities, and should women sign up now for selective service?
What I think we should do, because it is kind of unlikely we'd have to go into a draft situation, is when men and women turn 18, have them check a box and say if they would be willing to serve in the event of a draft. Because I do think you would have a fair amount of people who would still say yes. And that way, if we ever had to go to a draft, we would have a list of all the men and women 18 to 26 who would willingly serve. And then if that's not enough people, we can figure out a solution there. But I don't think it's a bad idea to have women sign up for the draft.
Caitlin, what do you think when you hear that women are now going to be serving in combat roles? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I think Abby's solution is a great one. If I were 18, I certainly would not be checking that box personally, and I don't think that I would want my daughter to be required to sign up for the draft, sign up for selective service. But the facts are, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court considered the constitutionality of having only men have to register for selective service. And because women weren't in combat positions, they said that they didn't have to register. And that fact has changed. So I think that it will be looked at again, and hopefully it will be a solution that, you know, we can all live with, like the one Abby suggested. But because women are now, you know, allowed to serve everywhere, I think that they should probably be required to sign up for the draft as well.
Amber, how do you think all of this could affect lives, both military lives and civilian lives?
Well, look, you know, legally, I don't think this is even a question anymore. As Caitlin said, there was a precedent that said this is why women don't have to serve, and that precedent, I mean, now that's gone. That standard is gone. So we have to think realistically about what this is going to bring for the future. And speaking from a personal standpoint, it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, equal rights, equal responsibility. But on the flip side of that, I do have a daughter, and I can't imagine her being 18 and in the unlikely event that she is drafted having to go to war. But there's a deeper moral issue, I think, if we're going to say that, between the whole idea of the draft period, because if we are going to have it equal, then we have to be ready as women to sacrifice our motherhood and the fact that we are moms and go off to war if men who are fathers are asked to do the same thing.
Well, you know, the Center for Military Readiness did do a study about this whole thing about women in combat, and their results show that, you know, women are not as strong as men, they're not as fast as men, they're not as accurate in their sharp shooting skills. What are your thoughts, you know, about the whole, you know, there's no comparison.
And there's actually some controversy after the study about, was this a fair study? Did the people who conducted the study not want women in military? Did they jerry-rig it so that women couldn't succeed? But the truth is that women just have a harder time dragging a deadweight body across a football field than a man does. Usually, there's on average, there are women who are exceptionally strong. There are women who can handle things like that. But this has been an issue. I mean, even in the 90s, they saw this with fighter pilots. Women couldn't be fighter pilots, and now they can. And my cousin serves with some really great female fighter pilots right now who he can trust to be there, right, fighting alongside of him, that they've earned the position. But they had to meet the same qualifications that men had to meet.
There's a lot of women who are in the military who don't believe that the testing should be skewed in their favor. They don't think it should be changed. They think they should have the same testing as the men.
The requirements for a job need to be specific to the job, not to an individual. My grandfather was one of the people who integrated women into the Secret Service. And to have the women be as effective as men, they had to change the way that they taught women. Men are stronger upper body, that's a fact. The strongest woman will not beat the strongest male. But women have very strong legs. And so the Secret Service taught these women to fight utilizing their leg strength. That's not the way that they taught the men. And the fact is that with our military right now, we don't have the manpower to change the way that we train women for these special forces combat jobs to make them as effective as their male counterparts.
Now, some are saying that this is just another hit against the family unit, against biblical femininity. And do you all feel there's a moral objection to women in combat from a Christian standpoint? Abby, we're going to have you take that one real quick.
I don't think you should pull a mother away from her child, but I think there are a lot of strong women in the world and a lot of women who wouldn't mind fighting and serving their country. And I also think we need to remember that just allowing women into any position, this doesn't have to be sending them to the front lines. There are a lot of strategic positions, tactical positions, just positions that women don't necessarily have to be as strong as men to do, but can have strengths in other areas.
Amber, I know that you wanted to weigh in on this as well.
Right. I think that the biblical role of a woman is varied. We can't say that this is exactly what a woman is supposed to do according to the Bible, because the women of the Bible were, should I say feminists? I don't know if that's a bad word here, but I said it. There were women of the Bible who were spies. There were women of the Bible who were judges. Women of the Bible, the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31, she bought a field, which means she was a businesswoman. She had merchants, she had servants. So I don't think that we can say this is what a woman is supposed to do and this is the role according to the Bible, because there are various roles.
In Israel, there are women who openly serve in the military in combat roles and have been for years.
A lot of people use the IDF as an example of a successful integration of women in the military. And like Amber said, women since Bible times have been involved in outside of the home, as some people would say, where a woman belongs. But in the IDF, there are some positions that they are not allowed to have. But they are more in combat roles. Like they're placed in areas where they might not see combat every day, but they are prepared in case it happens. Like they guard the borders that are with the countries that have signed peace treaties with Israel. And I think they're also not allowed to be in tanks, which is in close quarters with the male military soldiers. So what is the equivalent of that in our military? And also, I had a friend also point this out to me, a previous reporter from here, and she said, Israel did this because Israel's small and they are constantly under the threat of attack, and they had to find a way to get their numbers up. And in America, it's different. It's coming from a philosophical standpoint of equality rather than a necessity.
The overwhelming problem here is that in our country, it's become something about political correctness for this decision, and for so many now that we're facing. It's not about military readiness, and that's what needs to be the focus, especially in the current climate, I guess, with ISIS doing so much. It needs to be about how could we win this war.
Talk about the femininity issue in all of this.
Women certain times of the month are just biologically weaker than men, and it affects you emotionally, it affects your strength. I think that there are just issues that we face that men don't.
We're so scared to talk about the role of the man, the role of the woman. We're scared of it instead of seeing the beauty in it. And there are some things that women can do that men cannot do.
That's right.
And there are things that men can do that women can't do. And I don't personally see that as a bad thing. I think that when they're used together, it advances any cause. And I think it can be used in the military. I think there are some things that women might be better at in the military than men, just like I think that there's things that men are better at.
Amber, how do you see this affecting military readiness as a whole?
I think until we decide this is truly going to be equal down the board, all the way across, then we are going to have trouble. And we have to push aside this idea of equality or femininity and think what's best for our soldiers and best for our Marines. And if these people, these women, are not trained to the same standards as their counterparts, then none of it matters.
Well, all branches of the military have until January 1st to submit plans to make that change. The Family Research Council's vice president, retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, says that this is the wrong policy for America and it can negatively affect combat units. He said there are some units like infantry and special forces which are not suitable for combining men and women, and that leaders must choose what is best for soldiers' well-being as well as the best way to defeat the enemy. Boykin stated that the added burden of providing privacy for women soldiers could be dangerous for operations and that it has nothing to do with the courage or even capabilities of women. It is all about two things: the burden on small unit leaders and the lack of privacy in these units. Boykin said the recent change in precedent, quote, ignores fundamental biological differences between the sexes and the natural implications of those differences. Up next, could we be seeing the end of Islam as we know it? Hear why some experts believe that the fastest growing religion in the world could be on the verge of collapse. Some reports say that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. If that's the case, then why are so many Muslims leaving that faith? Dale Hurd has the story.
The headlines say Islam is going to be the largest religion in the world. But Islam is facing a crisis. The terrible deeds of ISIS, done in the name of Allah and following the violent example of Muhammad, have horrified many Muslims who are now questioning their faith. Missionaries to the Islamic world say more Muslims have converted to Christianity since 9/11 than during the entire 14 centuries of Islamic history. Many keep their conversions a secret, afraid for their lives. In London, this British college student from a Pakistani immigrant family left Islam after a lengthy study convinced him the Quran could not be true. We hid his face because Islam teaches that apostates must be killed.
If someone leaves Islam or becomes apostate, he is thrown out of his family. His family will be the first one to abandon him. His friends will reject him. He will be killed or he will be persecuted. A lot of my friends, they said, okay, this is the last time we are talking to you because you disrespected Prophet Muhammad. You disrespected Islam.
Imran has not yet become a Christian, but has studied the Bible and says Christianity is superior to Islam. Some ex-Muslims become atheists, but some discover a God who loves.
Because of ISIS, many people become Christian.
In Sweden, Pastor Fuad Rasho, himself an immigrant from Syria, has baptized more than 100 ex-Muslims.
Every week, I meet almost one or more who come to me. They come to me and like to know about Christianity, about Bible, because they are very angry. They are Muslim, as they don't like to continue to be Muslim.
When it comes to religion, Europe has been called the new dark continent, and some Muslims here feel trapped between atheism and radical Islam. But they see hope in Christianity. When Nassim Ben Iman came with his parents to Germany as immigrants from a Muslim nation, he remembers thinking that if Germany is a Christian nation, then Christianity is a dead, sinful religion.
Nakedness in the television is because of the Christian religion. Living together, not married, is because of the Christian religion.
But then Nassim discovered real Christianity and is today an evangelist reaching Muslims and non-Muslims for Christ.
When the people understand who Jesus is, they will more and more love Jesus and follow Jesus. And when the Muslims understand more and more what Muhammad is, what the Quran is, what the history is, then they will go farther away from Islam.
Islam is going to collapse.
Brother Rashid is the son of a Moroccan imam who lived for 15 years as a secret convert to Christianity. Now he hosts an Arabic-language Christian program called Daring Questions that challenges Muslims to question their faith.
Many Muslims actually, they say, if what ISIS is doing is Islam, I'm leaving it. Some of them are becoming atheists. There's a huge wave of atheism in the Arab world right now. And there is also a huge wave of conversion to Christianity following Jesus Christ. I have never seen something like this. Islam was never faced with this crisis before.
Nassim says Islam appears strong, but is only feeding off the spiritual void in many weak Christian nations.
Let me say, the greatest power of the Islam is the weakness of the Christians. That's what's happened in Germany and I think in America and all the Western countries.
Even while it seems that Islam is poised to overtake the West, Brother Rashid says Christians should not fear Islam, a faith that he is convinced is slowly dying.
Islam is not God's instrument to judge the West. I think people are afraid because of what they see on the news, but even violence is just a sign of collapse.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, risking their lives to follow Jesus. CBN talks with former Muslims who came to Christ through dreams and visions. Despite the barbaric deeds of ISIS, there is still hope for those living in the world of Islam. Recently, our Chris Mitchell met with Christians in Kurdistan, and they told him amazing stories of supernatural encounters with Jesus happening throughout the Middle East.
As ISIS conquered parts of northern Iraq and persecuted Christian minorities, as Iran continues to suppress religious freedom, a surprising result happened. The gospel actually began to spread.
So besides the darkness coming in and trying to get the light and salt out, killing lives and bringing so much pain and suffering, on the other hand, we're seeing a rise of the presence of God, worship, prayer, people experiencing Jesus, and people open up to the gospel and coming to know him and follow him, even from Muslim background.
Fabian leads a house of prayer in Kurdistan. He told us of meeting people who had supernatural encounters with Jesus.
People in these streets and in these refugee camps from places where ISIS have occupied, even people from here, that are encountering Jesus in dreams and visions.
Those divine encounters are not limited to ISIS-controlled areas. It's a phenomenon happening throughout the Middle East. CBN News met with some visiting Iranians to Kurdistan who wanted to share their stories. We've concealed their identities for their own protection.
One night when I was in bed, I had a dream, and the light was speaking as I'm speaking to you now. It was calling my name verbally and saying, "Come to me, I will save you and I will rescue you." But I didn't understand.
That decision soon followed for Abby and her mother.
About 7 months ago, we made our own decision to follow Jesus with all our hearts. When we came here, they explained about the life of Christ and the kingdom of God according to the gospel. Here we realized that my dream was of Jesus. He is calling us to give us salvation and to give us rest, to give us life.
I asked what danger she faces back in Iran.
If people knew about my faith, I would be rejected. This is a type of social persecution. If the government knew about my faith, I would be executed or hung in the street at once.
Claire came to faith through scripture and a friend.
When I was reading the Bible, I couldn't ask others to explain the passage. When I went to university, I met an Armenian girl. I asked her so many questions. How did they live? How do they worship? Many things like that about the Christian life. Her answers brought me to make my own decision.
It changed her life.
Christ brought me many blessings. I can't describe how faithful Jesus has been, but things which I cannot say in words have happened to me. Whenever I am praying and I'm lifting up my spirit towards God, I do believe and I feel the hand of God touching my heart and shaking my heart.
This man, we'll call Dennis, also had a dream.
In the dream, I still remember some marks on his face and that he was wearing a crown, a king's crown, on his head. A strong brightness came out of each part of his body, and many people were bowing down before him. That dream is still alive in me, and it's with me every day. I remember feeling like I saw heaven. He's shown me many different things since I believed in Jesus, but that dream became a turning point in my life.
I asked him if others are coming to Jesus inside Iran.
Yes, many people are coming to Christ through dreams. You can't imagine how Jesus is appearing to people. I feel like everybody's looking for a home, looking for the truth. What the Iranian people are going through right now is very difficult. The only one who can change that situation is Christ himself. So please pray and ask others to pray for the people of Iran to experience the power of the resurrection.
Iran's mullahs try to quench Christianity in their Islamic Republic. Despite those efforts, missionaries say Iran has one of the fastest growing churches in the world. While politics and extremists rearrange the Middle East, Fabian and others say the Holy Spirit is working at a much higher level to change lives.
The harvest is very ripe and people are desperate. They have lost everything. They are in pain. They need help and they are ready to listen, and people need to know that. Yes, there's many bad people and they want to kill and destroy, but there's so much more people who are desperate for answers in life. And we as the light and salt, we need to be here for such a time as this, to be his voice and be his hand and bring the gospel of the kingdom to their lives.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Erbil, Kurdistan.
Finally, Grammy nominations are out and several Christian artists are up for multiple awards. Toby Mac and Matt Maher are among the nominees for Best Song and Best Album in the Contemporary Christian Music category. The other Grammy nominees for Best Contemporary Christian Song are Third Day, Crowder, and Francesca Battistelli. Israel and New Breed have been nominated for Best Song and Album in the Gospel category. The Grammy Awards ceremony airs live on February 15th from the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Well, that's all for this hour of CBN News Weekend. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com and stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a wonderful weekend and may God bless.